Don't we all just want to be loved? Well, America's most Technicolor podcast, The Pod People, loves you. I'm Matisse Van Rossum, and you must be a scarecrow if you think we fucking.
I'm your resident alligator expert, Ben Sheets.
Well, I was gonna say that I'm your alligator boy, but I guess we've all got alligators on the mind.
Not me. I'm thinking about fucking scarecrows.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't me before the episode, in fairness.
Yeah, but now...
Yeah.
Yeah, I am an expert now, so...
Yeah, Ben did a little learning about alligators during the process of watching.
Hey, in fairness,
we'll talk about that.
I am young, I am dumb, and I am full of alligator knowledge. Okay.
I was real worried for a second there.
I thought you were going to say you were full of alligator cum.
Yeah, same. Which, yikes. But anyway, hi, I'm Cleveland Mosier, and it's nice to grab your ear for a moment and just let's have a chat about Pearl.
Pearl. Well, we're back in the Ty West X universe. And if you think it doesn't seem like it's been a long time since we were here before, you're right. We did an episode on X just about 6 months ago, but Ty West is already back with his follow-up to X, the prequel, Pearl. Once again, Pearlquel. The Pearlquel. Once again, starring Mia Goth. It is an origin story of the murderous, horny old lady from X. It's out already because they shot it at the exact same time.
Well, I want to talk about the background of this movie a little bit. I read an interview with Mia Goth and Ty West.
Oh, cool.
Because they co-wrote this movie together in about 2 weeks. Because X was made right at the beginning of the pandemic, right? And they were shooting in New Zealand. And they were like,
what?
We got to make the most of this.
Wait. Like, the farm is in New Zealand?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And they were like, we have to make the most of this time because who knows when we can shoot a movie again. Because beginning of the pandemic, everyone was panicking. You know, everyone was like, this is going to shut down for a long time. And they were already in New Zealand, so they were like, let's make the most of it. So they wrote the script while on set over 2 weeks.
Actually, they wrote it before filming had even started for X because it was at the beginning, like you said, of the pandemic, and they were already in New Zealand, and there was a mandatory quarantine for 2 weeks.
Okay, so they had a little extended time.
Yep, so they couldn't start shooting X yet, and in that time, Ty West and Mia Goth together, apparently over FaceTime, wrote the script for this film as basically a spec script and gave it to A24, and A24 greenlit it immediately and were like, if you want to shoot it at the same time since you're already there, go for it.
And so they did. A little extra budget.
Yeah, give you a little extra budget. And so they did.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I love that. I think I would love to see more, movie sets, I feel like that's something that we haven't seen a ton of. I think we saw it a couple of years ago with the Fear Street trilogy coming out.
I mean, all three of those movies are in totally different settings in different time periods.
So is X.
Yeah, but you're talking about reusing the same set, and Fear Street doesn't really do that.
Sure, but I mostly mean, movies sold as trilogies.
As like sure.
I saw a story recently. I can't for the life of me remember what series it was, but I saw there was a story in Bloody Disgusting last week about another series of movies set, sold as a trilogy.
Oh, really?
And I think it's a really cool concept. It's bridging that gap between movies and TV almost in a weird way.
I did get that vibe off of Pearl. I will say, I loved it. It did kind of feel like...
It does feel a little bit slapped together, doesn't it?
Well, slapped together might be...
That's maybe a little unfair.
I wouldn't say slapped together, but I would say it does feel like 2 episodes of a long format television series.
Yeah, I mean,
Which,
I think
a good
Pearl,
one.
I think Pearl feels like a story that was conceived in a couple of weeks.
It's very simple.
I liked it too. Yeah, it's very straightforward, but it does sort of feel like them just being like, well, we've got some time to kill. What if we were to spin off this movie we're about to make and do something different with one of the same characters in a different time period?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the experiment is overall effective.
Yeah, it's a success.
Do I think this movie really adds anything to X? Maybe a little bit.
I would say a little bit. There's some cool things.
It has a lot of the same themes. The idea of the X factor and wanting to be famous, but really at the core of it wanting to be loved by people. I think what it is more than anything else, what I like about it, especially when you look at the direction they're going for the 3rd installment of this series, which we'll talk about later, is that each of these movies sort of feels like an exploration of like a specific time in film history.
Yeah.
We talked about on the X episode how that movie is very much like a love letter to like 70s grindhouse sleaze, kind of. Mm-hmm. And this one is very much a love letter to sort of golden age Hollywood. With
very technicolor.
With a dark twist.
Sort
yeah.
of Douglas Sirk melodrama.
Yeah, and the beginnings of widespread pornography.
Yeah. I almost wish there was more of that in this movie. I feel like that would have tied it to X a little bit better. I don't know how I would have liked to see it done necessarily.
The plot, like with this character more. I think they did about as good as they could have, like with like it still being in the same world and setting. Mm-hmm. But I see what you mean. Like I just because it's fascinating, right? Like it is really like fascinating to kind of like delve into the birth of widespread pornography and like what that means.
Yeah.
But I think that X does a pretty solid job of displaying that once it's become that, right? And there is something kind of cool about this sort of like prequel film, like being like the glimmer in the eye of a nation, like, and we see like just the twinkle in the eye, like this is the very beginning of like that spread of pornography, and it's gonna be an epidemic. Well, and that's what's cool.
Not just pornography, but exploitation.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, going into Maxine, when we get it, that's the video era when it really
set in the 80s. Yeah.
And what I'm excited about with Maxine, I was going to wait to talk about this, but I'm fucking really, really excited to talk about it, is both of these movies, X and Pearl, feature a protagonist that wants to be seen, that wants to be loved, that is right on the edge of it, and they just might become porn stars in some capacity, right? And it's really fascinating because like all that they want, their entire life, their life goal, their dream, their desire is to be a porn actress. That's the best that they can hope for, and they almost don't make it. They don't make it or almost don't make it, right? But with Maxine, what I'm really hoping is we get to see the other side, you know, and it's like, oh, finally someone does make it, but is it going to be...
Well, I mean, I'm sure it will be following Mia Goth's character from X, because that is Maxine, and it's like 10 years later or something like that.
It's in the 80s.
So, yeah, I mean, we're already talking about it. Like, the teaser that they show at the end of Pearl is just like a helicopter shot coming over the Hollywood Hills, and instead of the big Hollywood sign, it's the big sign that says Maxine with 3 X's. So the vibe that I get from that is that at this point, it's not in Texas, it's in LA, it's 10 years later, she has made it. She is a big star.
I hope so.
I hope so too, because it feels like the logical conclusion to this series.
Yes.
But I mean, think about it. Like, look at Boogie Nights as an example. Like, that movie is truly about, like, the turn of the 80s and, like, the video boom and, like, how it ruined the porn industry in a lot of ways because, like, it becomes more spread out and devalued in a lot of ways.
And anybody
And-
can buy a video camera and make their own
and
porn.
I'm sure we'll get plenty of that.
Mm-hmm.
I love how they jump between eras in these 3 movies. I wanted to talk about that a little bit more, actually, because in X, like, it's very much 70s pastiche for a time setting of the 70s. Where this one is kind of interesting, because I feel like this movie is very much a pastiche of, like we said, the golden era of Hollywood in, like, the 40s and 50s.
But it's set in
But it's set in
1918.
1918.
Which is still the silent
How do you guys feel
era,
about
yeah.
that? Because, like, I feel like that's very disparate. Like,
I like it. Okay, so looking at the color grading of this movie, it's very heavily inspired by The Wizard of Oz, right? Like the first Technicolor movie.
which was like 1940-ish.
Yeah. And
1939, yeah, you're
while
close.
we're a ways out from that, this movie is about the beginnings of something. It's about, like, the budding of the porn industry. Like, even though, like, we don't see too much of it, like,
Yeah,
it's the sprout, you know, it's not the thing. It's not like the focus of this movie, but it is the theme of what is assumedly going to be the theme of the trilogy.
Yeah,
It's
well,
about
that's
that in
and so
terms of the
it's-
trilogy, less so than the film.
than this
itself.
movie. This
Right.
movie is not. You keep saying it, but this movie is not really about pornography.
well,
okay. There's the scene where she goes to the projectionist at night, and he shows her, like, oh, this film that nobody's ever seen, and it's like a stag movie. Apparently, that was a real
Yeah, I
stag
would say this
film
movie
from
is more about
1915.
narcissism
Yes.
and trying to escape your situation.
Yeah.
Well, it's highlighting the path of someone who enters the porn industry before that industry exists.
But Pearl does not. Pearl as a character is never a porn star.
No, of course not. But in the previous film X, the character that Mia Goth also plays,
Maxine, yeah.
right, is pursuing that.
Right.
And like, we see in Pearl, I mean, there's a reason why in X Mia Goth plays both Maxine and the old lady trying
Right.
to kill her, right? Is because in X it's about the old lady seeing and envying her stardom. Whether or not her stardom is becoming a chorus line dancer or becoming a porn star. They're both based in exploitation.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
And so, like, okay, so whether or not like
I'm not
being
arguing
a
that.
chorus dancer is a porn star, it's still about, like, it's still like it is still a character study over the type of person who, like, falls into that world and how they try to fall into that world, whether or not they succeed or fail.
Well, yeah,
And-
somebody who wants so desperately to be loved that they're willing to sell their body in one form or another in order to buy that.
Yeah,
to buy that adoration, whether it's a dancer, in the pictures like Pearl wants to be, or, a porn star like Maxine wants to be.
And while, like, we do not see the seed sprout, this movie is the act of planting the seed.
Sure.
Like, and that's why, like, while it is not the core of the film, I do still put a lot of weight on it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, and that's all I mean. But, like, going back to my original point, shooting it in Technicolor is to display and to mirror the Wizard of Oz in so many respects. When she's on the bicycle with the top hat, she looks just like the school teacher who is the Wicked Witch, right? Like, they're very intentionally playing up those same things. She talks to the animals the same way that Dorothy talks to Toto. There's a fucking scarecrow, quote, character. Whether it's alive or not, she treats it as it is, right? Like, there's a lot of comparisons to Wizard of Oz here.
Totally.
And she's a young farmhand who wants to get away, just like Dorothy. And so the intro credits, like, it's all framing around that, because the Wizard of Oz was the planting of the seed. It was the beginning. It was the first budding of Technicolor film.
Yeah.
And I think that theme is very intentionally made allegory with the porn industry, where we're seeing the birth of the porn industry. We're seeing the very beginning of it, the planting of that seed. And even if, like, there's still a little bit more time before 1940, I think it works in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, I agree for the most part. I think that there is a degree of anachronism in the fact that the film is set in 1918, but is sort of done in the style of the films of the late 30s and early 40s. Because if they wanted to really set it in its era, it would have to be black and white and silent, which I think could be a really interesting film to do something like this in the style of a silent film. I think that that's hard to sell now, which is why I think that they. I don't think you can sell that.
The hurdle there is like it's almost too far out there to like.
Yeah, I think the struggle is that they want to use this same character and show her as a young woman, but setting it in the late 30s would put her almost in middle age at that point already. So they need to have it when she's still young and naive and starry-eyed and so on and so forth. So that kind of creates somewhat of a disjoint in like, well, we're really trying to emulate films from this specific style, but for the character, for the story we're trying to tell, we have to set it in this era. And I think that there are some good parallels, some maybe a little heavy-handed parallels to modern society, just because set in 1918, a big backdrop of this film is the Spanish flu. When she goes into town, everybody's wearing masks. It's very obviously doing like COVID parallels,
it's like,
which makes sense.
This at the beginning of the pandemic,
which makes sense considering when the film was written and shot, like right at the beginning of the pandemic. So, like, I do see all of that. The film snob in me, the film student, would love to see this movie as like a 1918 style silent film, shot on like 16 with no sound.
However, there's a lot of utility to putting it in the 30s, 40s style.
Totally.
Because, like, I think of the parts of this film that I found the best. I think the best scene of this movie is the final monologue. One of the final monologues of Mia Goth. And, like, that works because it's a film with sound,
Of course.
Like,
you could not do that with title cards.
No,
you absolutely could not.
Absolutely not.
Or even like just in black and white. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, technically, risk too high.
Right.
This is
especially when they shot this before even releasing X and not knowing how that was going to do, trying to do something like quote unquote out there, like doing a black and white version of this.
The Lighthouse barely got away with it with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, right?
Yeah.
And Robert Eggers. It barely got away with it.
Anything that comes out in this day and age that is black and white is automatically labeled an art house film.
And Ty West is already trying to
whether it is
sell
or not,
two movies to A24, right? Like that's already a big enough ask. So like when it comes to like industry side stuff, I get it. Now when it comes to thematically, why would they pick that style? I think I would have liked a little bit more about this, but this is almost more. This is where I'm encroaching headcanon, and I recognize that. But I still want to say it, and that is in X, Mia Goth's character has the X factor, right? It's the same face. It's essentially the same person. That's the whole point, right? And in this, she's told when she goes to audition to the chorus line that they're looking for someone who's more blonde and blue-eyed.
Who's younger and blonde.
Young and blonde and blue-eyed.
With the X factor.
They would have the X factor. And what I think the movie is saying there is that Mia Goth's character is aesthetically ahead of her time. And this film is from her perspective, right? And that her perspective is, while deeply flawed and missing something because she's all fucked up and crazy, there's a magic there, and she's ahead of her time. She's already seeing the world in Technicolor, and I like that. And I think it's flimsy, and I don't know if the movie really conveys that, but it's how I feel from it, and for me that's enough. I really liked it for that.
Yeah, no, I think you make a fair point. I think a better way to handle that would be to truly ape The Wizard of Oz and have parts of it be black and white and then parts of it in Technicolor.
Oh, that would have been fun.
But, you know, I do think you bring up...
tiny bit of that.
I do think you bring up an interesting point talking about Pearl's character in comparison to Maxine and X. I think this movie does kind of recontextualize the character of Pearl in X in a way that I haven't quite decided if I like yet or not. We just got out of this movie. Like, we came straight home to record. Yeah. So I haven't had time to fully process my feelings. But X, the way it presents the character of Pearl is that she was a successful dancer, that she was famous, she did have the X factor, and that it's the withering, the decaying of her body with age that drives her murderous, cruel desires, because she sees the beauty that she once had in these younger people and pines for the days when that was her. And this movie kind of, not even kind of, suggests that that was never her. That she never had the X factor, that she never escaped her farm. That's the whole thing. Her whole drive in this movie is escaping the farm where she's grown up, you know, going to the big city, being famous, being beloved. And we see from X that she did end up on the farm forever.
One of the things I really like about that, though, is it almost feels like a sort of Sunset Boulevard of someone who didn't make it. Well, you know, it's sort of, you know, we see it even in the movie where Pearl sort of projects an image of what is going on that's very disparate from actual reality. Yeah. And I think that's part of what her character is in X. She presents that she was a very successful dancer. She looks at the past with the rose-tinted glasses. Yeah, like she used to have that. It's because it's much less painful, you know, than looking at actual reality for what it is.
The way it works for me is what I think this movie says is she was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Could be.
And it's as simple as that. And again, the Technicolor thing ahead of its time, like all of that, reemphasizes that to me, that her jealousy at her youth and her having at Maxine having that opportunity is because Maxine is the same as her, but she's been favored by fortune for just being at the right place at the right time, and that, you know, just at that era and those judges specifically were looking for blonde hair, blue eyed, and young.
Yeah.
And
well, that's the funniest part about it to me too, is that like her big break that she's like striving towards in this movie is to be part of like a church chorus line that goes around to some like small cities in Texas and performs for like the needy and stuff. It's like that's her escape, you know. It's like it's not an opportunity to be in like a big film or to be on Broadway or something. Like she literally just wants to be on this fucking church chorus line, and she can't even land that because she doesn't have the X factor that they're looking for. What I do like about this movie is how sort of pitiable and pathetic of a character she is. It's like you kind of feel bad for her, but also not really. Yeah. Because of the horrible things she does.
It's the kind of thing where, like, I don't know if you guys do this. This is kind of like weird to say, like, in a public setting, but like, if you're like watched a porn video, right, and you've looked at the view count, and you've said like, damn, this person has been watched by millions of people. Right?
Sure.
And, like, they have this weird, like, secret following, you know, of millions of people who won't talk about it, but they're beloved, you know, in some capacity, like, by millions of people. And it's such a strange kind of celebrity. It's I find it fascinating.
It is interesting because like you can see how successful you are in like your view counts and
Metrics.
stuff and your metrics. But yeah, like it is kind of, there is like a sense of shame to it as well, because like you don't just go around talking to people about who your favorite porn star is, right? I mean, I'm sure some people do. Like,
I have friends who are just like, oh yeah, so and so. You know.
I mean, I guess maybe every now and
Great,
then,
but like I've always found it to be kind of weird. Personally,
if the drinks are flowing or whatever. But like, yeah, there's something weird about like sitting down with your buddy and being like, oh yeah, did you see the new video that such and such porn star just did? I jerked off to that, so good, you know. It's like even if you're a fan, like everyone is there, everyone has their porn stars that they like and that they prefer and stuff, but it's also like it's a secret thing, it's a private thing.
Yeah, very.
You know, it's like
I personally prefer to keep it there.
It's like who I jerk off to is for me alone, not to like share
not for
with
my
other
buds.
people.
Yeah, I love you guys, but yeah,
like you know. That being said,
I'm
I'm
not here
sure
to share like which porn actresses I'm
sure there are plenty of like dudes out there who like share porn videos with their buddies and shit.
I've heard stand-up comedy bits like from comedians who are just like, yeah, no, you should totally share your Pornhub account with your friends and stuff, because like you can share like all the best videos or whatever and like keep track of like your metrics and like tab your favorites. And I'm like, I think that's weird.
I also think that's weird. I also think that's weird.
I would
because
never
like,
fucking do that in ever.
Because then it's like you also have the association of like, I know that my buddy jerks off to this same video too.
Right? Yeah. I don't want that. Like, I don't want to think about that.
I think the only exception to that, and it's a stretch, but is like a very funny video that happens to be porn.
Oh yeah, I mean, I for fuck's sake, like I mean, I've never gotten off to it, but like the hoverboard cuckold video is one of the funniest goddamn things I've ever seen in my life, and I think everyone should like know about it because it's the funniest shit in the world. Is it hot? To me, no, it's way too goddamn funny for that. But like that I mean, like Dan Harmon had a whole stand-up bit about it, and that shit's fucking hilarious.
She loves cream of wheat video, right?
Oh yeah, dude.
With the French toast guy getting sucked off by Aunt Jemima, then the dude playing the saxophone.
That's some weird shit. Yeah, it's funny as hell. Yeah, like I mean that kind of, especially in like this day and age, you know, like I mean that's expected. But like, yeah, I don't know. Well, I think y'all know though. Y'all get it.
Yeah, no, we get it. Page. We're on the same page.
Yeah, like that's sacred. That's for me.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, and
well, that's the thing with comedy. Like, it's not meant to get off.
Yeah.
Like, getting off is something very personal. Yeah.
Or horror in that respect. Hopefully, and this movie does, I think, a fantastic job of writing that line the same way that X did, where it's like I was laughing pretty consistently.
This is a funny movie.
Yeah, just like X was.
X was funny too, but I think this is, I would say this is more of a like black comedy than X was.
It sets the tone great for that right from the beginning. Let's talk about that a little bit. The opening sequence is first off, I already mentioned it briefly, but like the title credits are all done like, you know, old school with like the wonderful scrawling font, and it's got the side wipes as it all comes in.
Yep.
I fucking eat that shit up, man. You know me.
Yeah,
I grew up like, I had a very eclectic childhood. I grew up watching like old movies. This is my jam. And so like I was super happy to see it, of course. No surprises there. I had a great time. But it features her talking to all the farm animals. She's basically doing like a Dorothy meets Snow White kind of thing, where she's, you know, talking to the cow, she's talking to the sheep, and she's singing to them, and one day I'm gonna be a star. And I love that shit, man. I eat it up. And Mia Goth is so good.
She's great,
She's killing it, and I love it because it ends with her, like, going to the far end of the barn and running up the hay bales to do a number for all the animals in the barn. And she's kind of, like, elevated up. And then in walks the goose.
The goose. And just immediately immediately steals her spotlight.
Yeah, it steals her spotlight. And I love that. I love what it says about the character. It shows her like her jealousy and her fear of that spotlight being stolen from her, which is the core of her character motivation in X.
Yes.
And also, it's funny as shit. Like here comes like a literal goose like waddles into the bar, and it's just being a goose. It's just hanging out on a beautiful day.
It's just a goose being a goose.
Mr. Deuce, my arch nemesis. Like,
well, yeah, and she responds by stabbing it with a pitchfork and then going and feeding it to the alligator in the pond.
and I love the cinematography in that sequence too. There's a really nice shot, like low to the ground, where she's carrying the pitchfork up to Mr. Deuce, and like Mr. Deuce is like framed in the prongs of the pitchfork. Like there's the cinematography in this movie fucking slaps.
It's nicely shot, yeah.
And and so then she stabs Mr. Deuce, and she carries it down to the pond. And I have to talk about how good the puppetry is for this goose. She's just got it on the end of a pitchfork. And this is something, okay, so animal death is something like that I don't take lightly in movies. I think you have to be very careful about how you handle that. So
yeah,
it
but
isn't
fuck
funny.
a goose.
But
geese,
fuck a goose.
Geese are nasty.
Yeah, we've all been chased by geese at the pond as a child. They have teeth on their beaks. It's fucking scary.
Honestly,
wretched
she's
little,
heroic
wretched little mouths.
Yeah, like we're still on part of it. And the movie knows it, and it handles it very well. But like the goose, the prop of the goose, like skewered on the end of the pitchfork with its head like flopping around, is hilarious. Like, and it's like it's the perfect middle ground where like you know it's not real, like, and you can tell it isn't real from the prop. But, like, it's just real enough to be funny and kind of, like, offsetting. And the way the head is flopping around, man, is funny as shit.
Well, and then we get, immediately after that, an animatronic alligator.
Yes.
Which you can very much tell is animatronic from the sort of stiffness of its tail in the wallet.
I fucking love it. And it really, like, cements that we're seeing this world from Pearl's perspective, and everything is Technicolor and fake and artificial, and it's all done by design. And you know what? Cool. We get to have fun, and we get to have, like, a weird goose prop and an animatronic alligator in a pond, which is way better than CG. But then it pops out of the water and goes to grab the goose, which is obviously CG at that point. But they hide it really well. It's super short, it's super snappy, and the Pearl title comes up over the top.
It does a freeze frame, but then Pearl is emblazoned across the screen. Yeah.
It's Pearl! Like, right as this alligator is, like, coming out of the water to eat this goose. Like, it's, like, just totally, like, it's maniacal. You know, it's dark. And right then, we just get this wonderful, like, scrawling Pearl font across the whole screen.
The intro is perfect. It sets up the rest of the movie so well.
Yeah, it's great.
While we're on the subject of the alligator, I am glad that it is as small a part of this movie as it is, because it's featured heavily in the marketing material. And I was a little bit worried that they were going to make, like, the alligator, like, too much of a centerpiece for this movie.
It's just right.
And I feel like, it's just the right amount. I mean, it's really only a couple of scenes, right? You know, we've got that, and then the scene where she, like, takes her invalid father down out on the dock with the wheelchair, and she's, like, about to dump him in the pond for the alligator when, like, her mom comes along and, like, takes him back inside. And that's really it. She gets she takes the egg.
Well, there's a little bit more, but you went up to pee.
Yeah.
That's right.
We get and to me, it's just the right amount of payoff.
Yeah.
Like at the end there, but we'll get into that in a bit.
Well, I think we should talk about since we're talking about the alligator, we should talk about Ben Sheets, alligator expert over here.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Well, okay,
My
motherfuckers.
boy.
Okay, look.
Defend
I
yourself.
grew up in the Midwest. We had zero alligators.
Not an excuse.
Y'all grew up in Alabama, Alligator Central, in the Gulf Coast, nonetheless, where you had an alligator at every fucking crosswalk.
I mean,
just
okay.
He's not
that last
wrong.
Part is valid. We did have basically alligators at every crosswalk. Like, I mean, Gator Alley was legitimately a thing. Very close to us. Still is. Still fucking, I try to go every time I come down.
Yeah, I like to go look at a gator.
Yeah, look at fucking real dinosaurs. Like, they're fucking cool. It is true that a lot of the places that Tisa and I grew up playing in were, like, swarmed with gators, and it is kind of a miracle that we're alive. I played in swamps a lot as a child and should have died from either that or water moccasins. It's fair and valid. But, my dude, alligators are just fucking dinosaurs. Like, look at them. Like, look at any alligator.
They're basically unchanged for hundreds of millions of years, except they're smaller than they used to be.
Yeah, like, not even basically. Like, it is essentially the same. We just kind of went beep and just made them a little bit tinier.
Some of them used to have big, long legs, and they used to run around.
Okay, but
I know, right?
I was
Crazy,
still
right?
a little surprised to see alligator eggs, just because, like, you never see them in media. And that's my only, like...
Ben,
Okay,
Ben,
so-
okay, I said this in the movie theater. We literally did an episode on Crawl.
Yeah, but
like,
you don't see fucking alligator eggs in
yes,
Crawl.
dude, it's the big climax. I rewatched it recently. Like, when she goes into the nest, and there's a whole big nest of alligator eggs, and the eggs hatch right in front of her, because she's up on the embankment in the sewers. It's it's the big alien egg sequence. I rewatched it recently.
So we've sort of jumped past the punchline here.
We're funnier than actually.
Cleveland was sitting between Ben and I, but I still, at the point where Pearl goes and steals an alligator egg from the gator's nest,
From its clutch.
I still hear Ben lean over to Cleveland and say, "Do alligators lay eggs?"
The look I gave him.
Genuinely. Like, I don't care if you grew up in a place about dinosaurs,
and then
bro,
he went
do
on
you
to
know-
say, to try and defend himself, I grew up in the Midwest, blah, blah. I don't know if they're mammals or what.
Have
like,
you
how do
ever seen
not...
a mammal with scales?
Yeah, what the fuck? Like, platypi are weird, but, like, that's about the only exception. Like, apart from platypi, like, they're reptiles, dude. Like,
That's a
look at
reptile.
alligators. What else would they be? Mammals? What? Do they carry their children in their pouches?
So,
like,
They do
what?
carry their babies around in their mouths after they hatch.
So do
That's pretty
people, like, eat alligator
Yes,
eggs?
I have eaten alligator. Not eggs.
No,
Not eggs.
Not
eggs,
eggs.
though.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, putting the finger out.
That's not a thing.
But I have had
As far as-
alligator.
I mean, real talk, some
feel like that's-
some hillbilly in the bayou has almost certainly eaten alligator
That's a fucking
eggs.
untapped
probably
market.
Not even almost.
Like, everyone eats, like, all these exotic meats. Why don't people eat fucking exotic eggs?
I mean, they
do. I've had ostrich egg.
Yeah, I've had ostrich egg too. Like, there are some egg, but like, I feel like there's reptile eggs aren't the same as bird eggs. They're
Do
like
they just taste gross?
No, dude,
Probably.
there's this thing called salmonella that's really bad in respect
You
to
fucking
reptiles.
cook them. You don't eat eggs
yeah.
raw.
No. I mean, no. I think that's fair. I think they probably taste bad. I don't know. I've never known anybody who eats alligator or snake eggs. Alligator tail
I've
though.
had snake. I've had
alligator tail though.
so
That's some good meat.
Yeah, about half the time when you get alligator tail, say like at a fair, right? Like where
Right.
at a food court or whatever in the South, where like they offer alligator tail. Half the time that's catfish, but not all the time.
I don't eat fish. I can tell the difference between alligator tail and catfish.
I don't know. I think a lot of it's psychosomatic, but yeah,
But alligator. The whole thing with alligator tail is that it tastes like chicken, and it does. And catfish does not. Catfish is fish.
I've had alligator once, and it was alligator jerky, so I'm not an authority on this at all.
I've had alligator tail a number of times. It's really fun. I
tasty.
just love the idea. It's such like a fantasy RPG thing to like go to a booth and order a stick of skewered alligator tail. It's very fun, and I would recommend it. Yeah, alligator tail. Every time I've had it, it's been, whether it's real or not, has been very tasty.
Man, all I'm saying is I want to see the Iron Chef episode where the secret ingredient is alligator eggs.
I really think
Yeah,
that
I would like to see that too.
it's a matter of disease. I think it's a salmonella issue.
Why would alligator eggs be more
I don't know.
prone to have salmonella than chicken eggs?
Especially after cooking them,
People
like-
always get salmonella from chicken. Like, chickens are already riddled
Because
with
different
salmonella.
animals like carry different disease in different factors. Like, you know, reptiles are already notorious for having like infectious mouths and carrying like different types of disease. Look at Gila monsters. Look at like, you know, Komodo dragons. Look at, you know, like all these things. I don't know.
Well, yeah, but that makes
I am
sense
guessing,
because
in fairness,
they have literal meat rotting between their teeth at all times.
which is pretty cool.
Whereas like a chicken does not, but their meat's still full of salmonella. I don't know. I think that gator egg like gator eggs, like the outside of them, the shell is more like leathery than like bird eggs.
yeah,
It's
they
like
show them in the movie.
the
even,
composition
Alright.
the
It
composition
kinda
is like
funky.
is somewhat different. So I feel like they probably don't taste good. I feel like that's what it comes down to when you ask why do people not eat such and such. It's either that it's poisonous or that it doesn't taste good.
I'm Googling this.
They have this crazy...
Do it.
The scene in the movie with the alligator eggs where she crushes the egg is fucking nasty.
Yeah,
There's
well,
like blood. And
that's an egg,
out.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. But
That's an egg. Well, I mean, bird eggs are like that too. Just the ones that we buy in the store are unfertilized.
Yeah.
Except sometimes they're not. Have y'all ever gotten an egg that like had like a fertilized egg that had like
More
a
than
partially?
once. Sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Like,
gross.
It's gross, but yeah, that's just part of life. Like,
Well, yeah,
with
it's
eggs. It's like chicken eggs do that.
But if you're cracking like 3 eggs into a bowl to whip them up for an omelet or for scrambled eggs or whatever,
And one has a tiny
and
bird
you've got 2 of them in the bowl already.
It's an awakening.
And you crack open the 3rd one, and a little half-formed baby chicken falls out with a bunch of blood and mucus into your bowl of good eggs. You gotta throw it all out.
No, I just pull it out. I've done that. That's happened to me before.
Ew! There's blood in there,
Ew,
dude.
Bro,
don't care.
no.
Hey,
That's nasty. No,
Yeah.
Right?
that-
Like, I don't know. I think
that's some freak shit.
I think we separate ourselves from death, fairly often, and it's just like that's just every time you eat.
I don't want blood in my scrambled eggs, in my delicious, fluffy scrambled eggs. I don't want blood.
So
in there.
in my college,
I'll eat a rare steak, which is bloody, but I don't want blood in my eggs
in my
or amniotic fluid.
yeah.
Ugh.
It's fine. In my college years when I was studying at like a very small atelier in a small town, I had multiple friends who had who kept chickens, and so I would get home eggs like all the time. Small price to pay for those big old.
Well, yeah,
orange
the
yolks,
good
man.
ones are good, but
Good ones are real good. I gotta tell you. All right, so Google tells us it has been both historically and contemporary, and in contemporary times in various cuisines in the southern United States. Alligator eggs are also for consumption. Alligator meat is
Wow.
high in protein and low in fat, and has a mild flavor and firm texture.
so I guess. Well, yeah, that's alligator meat, and that's for sure. But I guess people do eat alligator eggs.
Yeah. How
That's
do
news to
crocodile
me.
eggs taste? The shell is nearly clear when first laid, but it develops a creamy white color over time. Most people think crocodile eggs have a strong and fishy taste. Ooh. Like, I could really not go for
Fishy
my eggs being
eggs.
tasty. Yeah, my eggs being fishy. Sorry, tasty. Though they continue to be a delicacy enjoyed all over the world.
Wow.
Some people improve the taste by boiling them. Well, I mean, that's going to remove flavor.
That is the most fucking redneck thing I've ever heard of. Boiled alligator eggs.
No,
You're
dude,
eating
that's
that on the fucking bayou in the swamp.
that's where you make an alligator omelet. That boiled alligator eggs, that's some Teddy Perkins shit. That's some like creepy, super rich white person thing to do.
How
Boil an
much?
alligator egg.
How much is a crocodile egg? It is expected the eggs could be worth up to $20 each.
Wow.
Quote, a female lays about 50 eggs. That's $1,000 right there, Mr. Lever said. I don't know who the fuck Mr. Lever is.
Yeah, who's
but
Mr. Lever?
He's making bank off
He's
of
making
crocodile
bank
eggs.
off of crocodile
Guess so.
eggs, I
Yeah,
guess.
goddamn.
Well, we've all learned something about alligators here today.
You can eat snake eggs,
Ben
too.
has learned that alligators are not mammals, and Cleveland and I have learned that apparently people do eat alligator eggs.
Yeah.
So,
A whole new world.
Me included
and
at some
knowing
point.
and
This
knowing
going on
is
my bucket
half the
list.
battle.
I want to eat a crocodile egg at some point now.
Well,
or a gator egg.
Let's get back to talking about
Yeah, that's enough.
Pearl.
We've got the projectionist. That's a pretty good talking point.
He's the one who shows her the smut film.
Does he play any of the characters in X? Okay.
No, Mia Goth's
I like him.
the only recurring actor.
I liked him. I like that it looks almost like his tie has been cut by scissors. It's at a weird angle.
Yeah, kind of. That's just how ties were back then, though.
At a weird angle? They weren't all like that. I
Not
haven't
all
seen
of
too
them,
many.
sure.
I watched a lot of old movies. I like that whole sequence as I used to be a projectionist. I was part of the last. I've talked about this before in the podcast, but like I was I got to work on one of the last 35 millimeter projectors, and Tisa's doing a whole like, "Ooh, look at me" face right now. And
Oh well, when Ben and I were in
really
film school,
devalidating, but-
we shot on 16 millimeter film in old Filmo cameras
it's not
from
a
World
fucking
War
competition.
One.
I think that's cool
And
too, dude.
I think
That's
I
neat.
could probably still thread a 16 millimeter projector.
Yeah, look at you. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, look at us.
Look at all of
film
us.
snobs.
We all.
I think that's cool. I think it's neat, and I think our listeners will think it's neat too. That we have experience with these things, and it's cool to see it in movies, and it's fun to see it was fun to see the projectionist character thread the film. It gave me a sense of nostalgia for my college days, and it was fun, and I like his excitement over these old classics, and I really believe
And porn.
very bohemian of you.
She would say that character.
Oh,
would say.
yeah. Give him a couple of decades if he hadn't been murdered, and he probably would have been a beatnik.
Well, his dream was going and living in Europe, being European.
Literally, what's his face's character from Moulin Rouge? The protagonist who goes over to Europe to be bohemian. That's played by Obi-Wan Kenobi, whatever the fuck is Ewan
McGregor?
Yeah, he plays. Yeah,
I haven't seen Moulin Rouge, so I couldn't help you there. But
I think
I'll take your word for
it
it.
brings some fun things to the table, but I don't think you would like it.
Probably not.
I don't think you would like that
I
movie
can't
at all.
say I'm a big Baz Luhrmann head. I did just watch Elvis recently, and it was something. It was an experience.
I mean, Moulin Rouge is an experience for sure, but we digress again. I like that character.
I like
a
the
lot.
projectionist character too.
He felt like of the era too.
Yeah, and he does sort of offer Pearl a bit of an escape. She's used to being berated by a very cold and withholding, stern German mother, and he compliments her and tells her she's pretty and that she's pretty enough to be up on the screen one of these days. But I mean, really, it all comes down to he's just trying to bang.
Yeah,
and he does.
Well, what I love about that character so much,
and he says he wants to see her on the screen in one of those porn videos, the smut videos.
He's like her Pearl's fantasy, right? Mm-hmm. She goes and
he's the keeper of the film.
Has an affair with him at one point, but the key point and the most telling point of his character, and in turn of Pearl's dynamic, is when she brings him back to the farm.
Yes.
And
I loved the conclusion of that.
And he sees the reality of what she lives in, and
who she is, too.
And his view on her and outlook on their relationship changes so immediately.
Yeah,
because
she gives him a dozen red flags, back to back to back to back.
Yes.
And because I really like how that's set up too, because in his own experience, he's found means to be bohemian, right? To live wherever he wants. He has a bed set up in the projection booth, and that's almost romanticized, right?
Yeah.
In reality, it's kind of sad, but whatever.
Yeah, right.
He's just kind of
My
up
man
there,
sleeps on a cot where he works.
Yeah, it's rough, but he
not something
romanticizes it, right? Which is the whole point of the film,
and she does as well.
Yeah, and she thinks that's really neat. He could up and go whenever he chooses.
Which is all she wants.
Academics call it bohemian.
Yeah, she wants to up and go from the farm.
Right.
So somebody who's not tied down like she is. And that is romanticized.
His dream is to go off to France again, and because when he was over there in the war, that's how he got a hold of that smut film, and it's his desire to go back there and maybe shoot more pictures like that.
Yeah, he wants to be a pornographer. He doesn't say it outright, but that is what he aspires to.
Because he sees what that's going to become, and he says this is going to be all over the place. The amount of money that people are willing to put down on this, now it's inevitable, and he was right. And I like that. I mean, he's a fantasy character, like, written in the past, so, like, you can do that. But still, I think it's fun.
Well, and he also plays kind of a mirror to the director character in X.
Well, that's why I was wondering if it was played by any of the same people.
Yeah, no, but it's not, but the character is kind of the same.
Yeah,
a little,
quite.
Yeah, because, I mean, the director in that is dating, Maxine, his porn star that he's gonna make money off of, but also, like, she's his, and so on and so forth. And I think that this character wants that with Pearl. He kind of sees her desire to up and go, and so I think he thinks that, like, yeah, I could convince this girl to run away to France with me and, make some smut films. Mm-hmm. But
and he also and so she's strung along on that myth. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what I like, is it does such a great job of showing, like, in the industry, in any industry, like, how easy it is to say words, and how people can get so caught
you can promise somebody anything.
It's, I mean, yeah, you just say the words. It's very easy. Mm-hmm. And for him, like, he's not even thinking about it that way. He's just trying to get laid. So he just kind of puts it out there, like, yeah, I'm thinking about going back to France at some point if you want to come along with me. He's not thinking about it.
Right.
He's not putting thought into that. And so when he then goes to the farm with her, and he sees all these red flags, and she's saying, like, oh, well, don't you want to take me with you? It's like, well, I gotta go.
It's like, yeah, maybe not.
I need a dip. And I like that. I like, I also really love how I think some movies would try harder to make the subterfuge more underhanded, but I love how basic it is with Pearl, where he enters the house and he hears thumping around, and he sees the mess from the fight the night before with her mother, where her mother gets killed, which we didn't talk about, but whatever.
We're jumping
and
all
he
over
says,
the place.
yeah, and he says, like, oh, what's this all about? And she says, oh, that's just the dog, which they don't have a dog.
The dog made a mess.
Yeah, the dog made a mess, so I locked him in the root cellar. And it's fine. And then she leads him out over to the barn, and she's showing him all the other animals. And he says, oh, and also the dog. And she says, what dog? And I just love how, like, Pearl's not smart. That's not why we're here. There's no, like, it's not fucking spy espionage shit. It's just real simple. She's real stupid. And I love that about her
I mean,
character.
like, she's a slasher villain, but, like, none of her kills in this are, like, premeditated. Every single one of them is a crime of passion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She gets worked up and loses control and kills people, you know?
Doing it.
Yeah.
And
I guess you could argue that her killing her dad is a little bit premeditated.
Which is cool, because that's the only one she regrets.
Right, exactly. She feels bad for her poor pa, who didn't deserve none of this. You know,
he really didn't.
Holy
shit!
My man was having a rough time.
I love how she tortures him in every way, like, intentionally or not. Like, one of the so her father, for people who haven't seen the film, her father got it real bad from the Spanish flu, and was left paralyzed. And so, like, her Pearl and her mother have to take care of him. Mm-hmm. And it's a big aspect of, like, the prison that she lives in, is having to take care of, like, her infirmed father. So there's a bit where after she's given her father, like, a scrub down, she gets in the bath because the water's still warm. Yep. That's her excuse, anyway, to her mother when she comes in. And she's, like, doing, like, kick dancing and stuff, and, like, just parading herself in front of him. And, like, it's really uncomfortable.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's weird and uncomfortable how, like, she's, like, just, like, outright, like, flaunting herself, you know, and her sexuality, like, in front of her infirmed father, who, like, he's in a prison, too. He can't fucking move. He can't do anything. And he's, like, we get he doesn't want to fucking be there and see that. And it's like, yo, like, you're my daughter. Like, stop doing all this shit. And he's just trapped, you know, there in the same way. And it's her kind of, you know, I see it as, like, her trying to escape her own cage, you know, and through that, like, they're just sort of imprisoning each other, and it's really fascinating.
Everybody's in a prison of their own making.
My favorite scene of the two of them is when she wheels him out to the end of the dock when the alligator is coming, because, like, before, like, you question, like, how
is he really
he
there?
is.
Yeah, because he doesn't really
And
react to anything.
Is he a vegetable or is he like trapped
Yeah.
behind his skin?
Gives such a good performance just in his eyes in that scene.
And his breathing, because he can't speak or anything.
To the point where I was like, are they going to like pull like, oh, he is actually more there than we originally thought? Because
I'm glad they didn't do that.
I'm glad they didn't do that, but
Just enough.
But yeah, they give him such a performance there in so little movement that it's really impressive.
It is really interesting to say that actor did a phenomenal job playing a full-on
person who's completely paralyzed.
Well, that's the thing.
But he did. Like you really see it, like just the fear behind it.
He does a lot with
there's
his eyes.
so
Yeah.
much limitations to what he can do. The fact that he gives such a good performance in those constraints is really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and like you said, it's a great way of confirming for the audience that he is still cognizant enough to at least be aware of danger, because he doesn't really react to anything else before that in the movie. And that's probably just because like he's imprisoned in his body, and he's probably just so despondent that like there's nothing to react.
Checked out.
Yeah, he's checked out, but he is still there enough so that when he's being wheeled to the end of a dock and sees a big alligator coming up, and she's talking like she's about to push him in,
now.
he's scared. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good.
The breathing is really well done, like you were saying, Ben. Like, I really like that sequence. I also like how that sequence is led up by Pearl carting him out of the house, and we get the mother in the window. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it really feels shot like an old Hitchcock film or something like that. Like, I love the cinematography in this movie and the framing. It's so classic.
It felt like almost a parallel to X, too, where,
she's watching them.
Yeah, she looks out the window and watches them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mother is great. I was reading, apparently she's not even really an actress. She was the intimacy coordinator on X.
What?
On the set.
Can you please explain what an intimacy coordinator is?
Yeah, so an intimacy coordinator
Fascinating job title.
It's actually a very good and important thing on a film set. Intimacy coordinators are there for any time there's sex scenes or anything, or like any intimacy that requires actors to be like very physical with each other. They're there to make sure that all of the boundaries are understood, that everybody who's participating is comfortable, knowing where their limits are, what they're comfortable doing, what they're not comfortable doing, and directing sort of the production around that scene.
Fascinating and needed. So essentially it's like the set equivalent of HR.
Sort of, except
but actually
except
valued and
actually there to help people, unlike HR.
There was a big
Yeah,
controversy recently because Sean Bean was criticizing the intimacy coordinator on Game of Thrones because he said it made sex scenes feel less spontaneous. Which is really
I don't like that
weird
take.
to say.
Well, also, like, Hollywood has
especially for a show that's like rife with sex scenes, like yeah, they're doing fine. Like no, they should. Spontaneous. Ooh.
Yeah,
Hollywood also has
not a thing to say for acted scripted scenes.
Yeah, and Hollywood in general has a pretty vile history of like actors and actresses being abused during like sex scenes and stuff, and like being pushed past their limits and not comfortable. Like, it's intimacy coordinators are good things to have.
Yeah,
on the
that
set.
seems very valued and needed. Yeah.
So yes,
fascinating.
The actress who plays Pearl's mother in this was the intimacy coordinator for X, and they liked her, so they brought her in. She is not a native German speaker. She learned German. She learned German specifically for this role, and I was reading was so convincing in her pronunciation and accent that she fooled somebody on set. A real German who was on set and thought she was as well, which I think is great.
Yeah, you really buy it.
She's very good in this movie. She's a very unlikable character, but not without her moments of humanity.
She portrays herself much like the Wicked Witch in Wizard of Oz. Like, she has that stern matron,
Yeah, she's
thin-necked, you know?
she's very
like,
severe
Yeah.
and cold and, you know, kind of cruel to Pearl, but you do get the sense that, like, she's like that out of her own insecurity and fear. You know, Pearl even acknowledges it in her monologue at the end that, like, I sort of understand my mother, like, why she's like this, because all she wants is the safety of a roof over her head.
It's a great character
and it has
revelation.
made her, and like ensuring that that is a thing has like made her this way.
Well, it's so true and earnest and honest, especially for a film that's so like Technicolor and fake.
Yeah.
To portray like such an earnest and like believable toxic relationship where like both characters are toxic to each other, and like it is often like the toxicity is motivated out of like caring and love, and she really does want the best for Pearl, just in the worst ways, and she doesn't know how to be the best.
Well, yeah, I think she probably
doesn't have those tools.
she probably recognizes that Pearl doesn't have the X factor that Pearl thinks she does. And, you know, she does tell her in a not particularly kind way that, like, life isn't really about what you want, it's making do with what you have. And Pearl does take that to heart later, towards the end of the film.
Enjoy the now.
But, like, that is just, I think that is her mom just being like, look, you want to be a star, but you don't have it, you know? Like,
Yeah, and I think
Well, not just that you don't have it, but people will see the darkness in you. Like, that's
Yeah.
a big
Right.
point.
She does say that,
She
yeah.
does have the X factor. It's just that her X factor is murder.
Well, I think on top of that, like, there is a narcissism to both of the characters.
Sure.
You know, I think the
also
mother
had those
has
dresses.
a very prideful, proud streak. You know, a great example of that is Pearl's husband. His family is very well off, and they
Right.
bring her a pig to eat and have a meal. And the mother is so prideful that she leaves it on the doorstep.
They don't
and-
accept charity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and doesn't
Yeah.
accept it. And
leaves it rotting on the porch.
I thought that was a
Yeah.
great image, by the way. Very evocative
Yeah.
of, like, repulsion and the rotting duck in there.
Yeah, it's, we're making a joke about it at the end when you got the family with all the rotting meal setting up on the table. It's like, damn, this is Resident Evil 7. Like, yeah.
But a great image, and
Yeah.
like it really says a lot about her character refusing to accept help and being so insular and being like, oh, this is not me doing this, so I don't accept it.
Right.
You know?
No charity, only the things that I myself have accomplished or done.
Which
Yeah.
in its own way is selfish. And I like that.
It's super
Also-
selfish. Well, I mean, she turns it around on Pearl when she comes back from, you know, her day in town where she goes to see the movie. She goes to town to get her father's medicine. That's why her mother sends her. But she comes back and she's like, "Where's the change?" And Pearl's like, "There isn't." And
There's
she's
exactly
like, "Yeah,
8 cents.
there should be 8 cents left. I know how much it costs." And we know that Pearl has spent that money at the theater, at the
theater.
movies. But she lies to her mom and says, "Oh, I got some hard candy for the bike ride home." And her mother like takes the food from in front of her and is like, "Oh, well, since you used my money to buy candy, you've eaten already, you know. You can have the leftovers in the morning, but no supper for you tonight." You know, because she considers that would be charity. In the same way that she won't accept the pig, Pearl doesn't deserve to eat. She doesn't deserve the charity of the food that she didn't help prepare, you know? So, yeah, it's totally selfish.
Yeah. And
Narcissistic.
it's great, too, because there's another way she reflects in Pearl, and that is that it's shown in the opening of the film. Pearl is in front of the mirror, and she's seeing herself as a wonderful star, and the spell is broken when the mother comes in and says, "Why are you wearing my old dress?" And, you know, like, you're not to wear those. And we see that her mother has a collection of them. Like, because Pearl wears another one of her mother's dresses later, and it's that beautiful red dress. A few, yeah. And we see her pull from a set that, even a few that she doesn't even wear in the movie. And it shows that at one point, her mother was also young and vain, and wore pretty dresses and wanted maybe to be a star in some way.
Well, and she even says that...
You never have to say it directly.
I mean, we can see, too, that she puts those dresses away and doesn't wear them anymore because she no longer has a reason to be beautiful. In her fight with Pearl before Pearl kills her, in reference to the father, he's like, he's supposed to be my husband. I'm not supposed to be his mother, but I've had to become that because, he can't take care of himself. So she's shut away any of that feminine sexuality that she would have had before, because now she can't even be pretty for her husband because she has to change his diaper and shit,
and she selfishly puts that on Pearl, because I was really grossed out. They didn't have to show anything, but I was really grossed out by that sequence where Pearl's coming back into the house and the mother says to her your father needs changing. You don't want him to sit in his own mess.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's awful. And again, nothing's shown, nothing, just words, and it's aw, and I hate it. And it does it's everything you need. But she, it's on Pearl too. And it's
she does have responsibilities.
Yeah, and I like too that all we really see the mother do is cook dinner.
She's chopping wood too. At a certain point.
She's chopping wood at one point too. But it's we don't see the mother at tasks as much as we do Pearl.
Yeah.
Even also, and maybe that's just because it's from Pearl's gilded perspective.
Yeah, the movie's mostly from Pearl's perspective.
So who's to say how much work she's actually putting in? But I do think that it is interesting. She is imprisoning Pearl. In some capacity.
Yeah, totally.
And,
absolutely.
She doesn't let Pearl spread her wings at all. Even if it's just to go to town, she's counting all the change. She's making sure that she was just going into town for that one thing. And whether it's based out of fear or protection or whatever toxicity,
it's she has an abusive relationship with her daughter for sure.
No doubt.
But I like that a movie that is as simple as this can do just enough little things to provide that nuance to keep things from being too one-dimensional.
Well, it might not be, it might be all simple and straightforward in the dialogue, but there's so much but movies aren't an auditory medium exclusively. There's so much shown and not told. And I really respected the film for that. There's a lot of show and not tell.
Mm-hmm.
What did y'all think about the sort of dichotomy of Pearl and her sister-in-law?
Loved it. Just enough.
Rich sister.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have wanted more out of that. I think it's just good the way.
Yeah, I think it's just enough. She's only in a few scenes as well. She shows up to deliver the pig and tells Pearl about the audition for the church chorus line. Then we don't really see her again until the audition.
Just enough to reaffirm they're basically sisters. They're in it together.
Yeah.
And I really like that character too, because while she's had everything laid out for her, and she's essentially a spoiled belle, she's still very kind and helpful and wants the best.
Yeah,
for
she
Pearl.
doesn't seem as vapid as you would expect a character like that to be.
Yeah, and I really like that because that's the reality sometimes.
Well, I mean, when after Pearl does not get the part and is distraught, and Mitzi takes her back to... Mitzi takes her home.
That's a great name.
And, Pearl starts to open up to her a little bit, how she thinks something's maybe not right with her. And is like, oh, but I've never told Howard, who is her husband, who we haven't mentioned is away at war. He's in Europe. It's World War I. So that's why he's absent from the movie. But then Mitzi, she tries to lend her a listening ear, and is like, well, I'll just pretend that I'm Howard and you can say everything to me that you would want to say to Howard. She gets a whole lot more than she was bargaining for.
Yeah.
I love that about Pearl too.
Absolutely fantastic monologue from Mia Goth. Just one medium close-up static shot, And that monologue is almost probably 5 minutes long, which is
a lot.
She spends a lot of time looking at the table in front of her, so I would not be surprised if she had a script or some kind of guide sitting there in front of her. Would not blame her if she did. It's a very long monologue, and her performance is fantastic.
It's so good.
But she basically
it's long, though.
It's long, but it's very good. I mean, she basically self-diagnoses herself. Like, she totally unwraps everything that, you know, she feels is wrong with her, and in so doing admits to the murders that she's done to Mitzi, and so she has to kill Mitzi because of it. Poor Mitzi, wrong place, wrong time. But that is the, I think, the show stealing moment of the entire film is that monologue. It's really, really excellent. Big kudos to Mia Goth for the performance, and also to her and Ty West for the script.
Yeah, it's an excellent
It's very
scene.
well written,
It's probably my favorite scene of the movie. It just stands out so well. I think what's so interesting about a scene like that, especially compared to X, where X is very much a throwback to 70s sort of exploitation, sort of Texas Chainsaw stuff. This one is very reserved in comparison.
Totally.
We don't get much violence until like the last 20 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And so a scene like that,
and some of it takes place off screen as well.
Yeah. And so a scene where it's not a scene of horror or violence directly stands out so much more, because, you know, you don't have all this spectacle to see. So the spectacle is within the inner characters and, you know, dialogue and stuff like that. So, like, this scene especially just stands out so much in the film.
It might just be because we're coming hot off of it, but even though I think I do prefer X as a film overall, I think that scene that we're talking about is like the rawest, most sincere scene of either of the two movies.
Yeah,
I would say.
totally agree.
And so I would even maybe say that scene is like the best part of both movies together. Even though I do generally prefer X more. It's just a very well written, honest scene with just a spectacular performance.
And the payoff is fantastic. After we were definitely rewarded after sitting through that sequence. So Mitzi gets up to leave,
make her excuses,
and she tries. She does her best trying to get out of there. She says like what she can best say, you know, to placate Pearl. But and we almost think she's gotten out of there. She's just getting out of the house, and she's on her way down the driveway when Pearl also leaves. And in her wonderful red dress, I love the lighting and the color in this scene, because like it's sort of overcast. The day is not so Wizard of Oz anymore. Yeah. It's not so pretty. The sun is setting on the Pearl's fantasy, but Pearl is still in this stunning red dress and with the white like cloth in her hair, and she comes out and she yanks up the axe that her mother last planted in the stump. And she starts making her way down towards Mitzi, and Mitzi knows what's up, and because she just heard the whole fucking monologue too. Yep. And she starts picking up the pace, and she's trying to get the fuck out of there. And she gets a good way down the drive before she just eats dirt. She trips. Yep. And she gets up again, and Pearl's gaining, and she's making her way down the way. And I love how this is shot, because it's all done again, sort of one shot. And Pearl comes up behind, and she's still just like they're just briskly walking at each other, and Pearl hits her in the back once, twice, 3 times, and she goes down. And I must have blinked and missed where they changed the cut, because at some point, like, then the camera pans back up, and Pearl is standing over, and we see this set of bloody footprints and like the aftermath, and Pearl's axe is now heavy with blood, and there was a really clean transition there
Well, yeah, I mean, they cut to Pearl looking down at Mitzi on the ground, and then back up, and then they cut to the wider shot.
Is there like a separating cut? 'Cause
yeah,
I would have
there's
thought like
it's
when
a-
we see like her walking down, hitting her in the back, and then the camera pans, and we see like the bloody footprints. I thought that was seamless.
No,
was there a
there's,
cut between the
no,
two?
there's a
There's
couple
a
of
cut.
cuts.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'd be curious to watch it again for sure.
It's very well
but
edited.
it's well edited for
Yeah.
sure. And then TC, you got up to pee at the worst time.
Yes, I know.
Like,
I
you really had to. I saw you like checking your watch, being like, okay,
I had to
gonna-
pee so bad during that whole monologue,
same.
and I'm like, I cannot get up during this scene. Like, I need to finish this monologue. So then, like, as soon as she murdered Mitzi, I was like, well, because I still thought there was like 30 minutes left in the movie. I was like, I can't.
was tight,
I
90.
gotta fucking go. But yeah,
So
I guess I missed
she
something
gets up,
cool.
and or you got up and she left. But like she takes Mitzi, and she takes her mother and her father, and she sets them all up around the dining table, sort of like intercut, and she takes Mitzi down to the water, and she really. The shots are cool because they do like the mirroring where like the same things are happening on
They
either
do
side.
like a sort of split screen for a while too.
Yeah.
It intercuts between like a
really stylistic.
reflection and like a split screen where it shows like one half of one action and one half of another action.
Which
And
they
then
do in
sometimes
X.
it's mirrored.
A few times,
Yes.
yeah.
And then it becomes sort of mirrored as well. And so yeah, we're kind of coming into the world of X. And we get some just fan-fucking-tastic shots of her hacking up Mitzi's corpse. Where like the axe is like goes like right down through her arm, and like you see the arm separated from the body, and then she does the same thing with the head, and we see like the truncated neck, and they're really good practicals.
Yeah.
Like it looks fucking
and
great.
she like throws her head to the gator.
All the bits.
Which
Damn.
is great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I missed that.
Yeah,
That was
and
a
then
shame.
I also like she goes and like she cradles like the sheep and cow and goats' heads like with her bloody hands.
If I had
it's
known
great.
there was only like 5 minutes left in the movie, I wouldn't have gotten up.
No, you gotta pee.
Yeah.
I was
I thought I
like,
still had a long time to go.
yeah, I was like tapping my feet as well.
Yeah.
We all had like big drinks before going into the movie.
Yeah.
And we had a
Big
big old
beers.
ciders. Yeah, yeah. I know the payoff is great. And yeah, she hacks her up and throws her to the gators, and she sets up this perfect scene in her eyes. This perfect dining scene of. I have to get everything ready for Howard. And she says that too in her monologue. She's like, well, I got to get the farm ready. I got to make sure, that I can have everything perfect for him when he gets back. And I love her.
Gotta
what
make
her
the best
view
of what I've
perfect is.
got.
Yeah. And her view of perfect is staging her mother's corpse and her father's corpse at the dinner table with this quote, like perfect meal of the pig and all the rest in front. And it's all rotting and decaying. And Howard shows up back from war. Pearl, where are you? And he comes upstairs, and he sees this horrible, nightmarish tableau, and then turns, and there's Pearl smiling.
Well, we know he stays.
Yeah.
He stays with her.
Okay, I feel weird saying this in a public forum, but, like, she's got to have that gorilla grip.
Yeah.
Like, that pussy has got to be real good.
Because he stays with her after that. Because we know, because he's still around.
She
in X.
definitely does have the X factor.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
Well, we gotta talk to wrap up. We gotta talk about how the film ends because it's
perfectly.
It's like it's so
credit
well done how they do the credits, and it's such a great visual gag. Because yeah, as we described it, or as Cleveland described it, it pans over to her, and she's like, "Oh, Howard," and she's like. The picture of perfect domesticity, and she's got like a pitcher of something that she's taken to
like
the table.
green milk.
Yeah,
I don't know what the fuck
it doesn't
it is.
look
Yeah,
it doesn't
it
look
looks
appetizing,
nasty.
but it's like, and it sort of like punches in on her face a little bit as the end is scrawled across the screen and the credits start. But where
The strings.
where
play.
like a normal movie would have done like freeze frame there.
Nah.
What they do is they just hold the shot as the credits roll, and just like over the course of like the 3 or 4 minutes that is the credits, is like Mia Goth's smile just slowly like morphs into like a grimace of agony. Just
It's
like,
this agonizing maintaining
She's trying
of a smile.
so hard to hold the smile.
this
for
fake
just
smile.
hours.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, she's not blinking either, so eventually her eyes start watering and she starts crying, like, as the smile becomes less and less of a smile.
It's all she's got.
And
She's
more and more
holding
of a
on.
grimace. It's just like, just that with the you know, classic old fashioned kind of credits.
Yeah. Where it's got like the title on one side
then
and the name on the other, and like ellipses going all the way to the other
Connecting
side.
yeah.
It's all classic. It's in the classic scroll still.
Just like as she
it
holds
over
this
her
like
face.
this rictus grin.
It's so good. I was giggling throughout
It's
the
so
whole thing.
funny. It's such a
and
fun. It's
great.
such a funny visual
It's
gag.
funny and it's fascinating, and you're really like glued to like watching her expression shift. Like Mia Goth fucking kills it.
Yeah,
She's so good.
She's a very good actress.
And like I love it, and like it plays throughout like the whole title cards, and you see all the cards. I like to I did catch among the title cards one of the roles was like, fuck, what is it specifically, but it was like, I think it's like Burn Master or something, and it's like, yeah, someone's like just in charge of like the gore from like the burns.
Also probably because her
fire.
mother does get set on
the
fire,
fire
so there
effects,
is an actor
What a cool
there
title for that
who's
job,
on
right?
fire. So yeah, there's a burn
It's
master.
something, it's like Burn Master or something, and I'm like, damn, that's a cool
Film
title
sets
for a
have
job.
fucking weird ass titles for shit.
man.
Burn Masters, Key Grips, Best Boy.
Best
was
Boy.
my favorite.
Yeah, and you're saying
production title.
What was the one the mother had?
Intimacy Coordinator.
Intimacy Coordinator. Yeah, it's
yeah.
great.
Movies,
Yeah.
the cinema.
So then we end the film, and I like too that I think some people would want to know, like, we're want to see Howard's reaction to that and like how that plays out and why he stays. But man, this movie is not about Howard. It's
We don't
called
need
Pearl.
to. We don't
Yeah.
need to see his reaction because we know that he stays with her.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
have already seen his character as an old man in X, who in that movie very clearly does still love his wife, very devoted to her.
Yeah, and I think it's so much more interesting leaving that to the imagination.
We don't need to see how that conversation played out. We know the result. We know he stuck around. He was able to love her psychotic behavior, her literally psychotic behavior. And then of course after the credits we got the Maxine teaser like we already talked about. So that one for sure they did not shoot at the same time as these other two, so I'm guessing it's probably I mean, I guess at this point maybe production is over.
It's listed as in development on
yeah,
IMDb, so.
I don't expect this one to come out 6 months from now. Maybe it will if they're really trying to keep that window, but I was nervous about this one coming out so quickly after X.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing we didn't really talk about a ton going in, is, like, my worry going into this is it wouldn't be able to stand on its own. It would be a companion piece to X that doesn't feel like a movie in itself. Like, that's a common problem with a lot of sequels, is, like, they feel like sister pieces to the original, where, like, if you watch them without a ton of love or context for the original, you wouldn't get much out of it. And I think this movie is super successful standing on its own, I will say.
I think it can stand on its own. I do think that it's enhanced by X. Without the context of X, I do think that there is probably something lost. Hard to say for sure, because obviously we went into this having seen X, so we can't say how well it works without it. So, I'd be curious to hear from somebody who has not seen X but does see Pearl.
So to put a cap on everything, the credits roll, and we see the Maxine lead-in, which we've already mentioned. It shows the Hollywood Hills, but instead of it being Hollywood, it says Maxine. But I do love also, I want to mention that it also then cuts to like a full-on title that's animated, traditionally like in an 80s style with that wonderful 80s chrome font.
Yeah.
And then
I love that font so much. I always
and then
have.
the hot pink, it says coming soon.
Yeah, of course, because if you're gonna do the chrome, you gotta do the hot pink like.
Well,
scribble
the
beneath
teaser
it.
starts too with like a VHS player, like you see the play button being hit and like the static coming up.
And
it's like I'm looking forward to seeing.
And it's worth noting
the 80s style.
Yeah, and it's worth noting too, in Chrome, it's Maxine with 3 X's.
Yep.
Because it's the third, one.
And
it's triple X.
Triple X.
Because X came before. This is
this
triple X.
This one's going to show full penetration.
If they're not cowards, it'll be in 4:3, like a video.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah.
I fucking hope so. Well, because, that's the thing. Like, these 2 films before it are very, like, drenched in the style of, well, I guess in Pearl's case is not necessarily when the film is set, but they're both like, there's a lot of work put into mimicking the style of a specific decade of film.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the 80s nostalgia that has been so in vogue in the last 10 years or so, in a lot of cases, it feels kind of hollow because it doesn't really capture the style of 80s film. It's more just like kind of an 80s aesthetic. Like, a lot of people are just like, slap some neon lights on it, and that's all you need to make it 80s. But from X and Pearl, I'm very excited to see Maxine because I get the feeling that they're going to pay the same level of attention to capturing the style of 80s cinema.
Yeah, I mean,
which
especially
is what I want.
For something about 80s pornos, it has to have that shot on video aesthetic.
I really hope it's shot. I really hope it's shot on video. 4:3 would be great. Like, I want them to lean into as much of that shit as possible. But let's rate X or Pearl. Damn it.
Well, I guess it's X-rated.
Yeah. I think this is of similar quality to X. I think I prefer X and what it's doing, and obviously the style that it's trying to portray. But I was overall really pleased with Pearl. Strong 4 out of 5, I think.
Yeah, I think I was kind of on the fence between 3.5 and 4 coming out of the theater, but our discussions really elevated it for me. I think this movie has so much richness and character. Even though it's a little slower than X, like, don't go expecting, like, an exploitation movie like X is. This is a very different movie.
X is kind of slow, too, though. We talked about that on the episode.
That's true.
It is kind of... I don't think the pacing is dissimilar, but it is a slow... It is kind of a slow movie.
And there's less payoff overall than X has.
That's absolutely fair.
But I think this is a great movie as well. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 as well.
Yeah, I'm torn between a 4 and a 4.5. I just love the aesthetic, and I was really impressed because often when films do like a fake Technicolor grading, they overplay their hand and it's hyper saturated and it's overdone. But here it's just enough to believe it's Technicolor.
This very well could have been actually shot on Technicolor film.
Like,
I wouldn't be surprised if they did that.
It's definitely digital, but like
I don't know.
Like the color grading enhancement is like, either way, it's really well done, and it really does an amazing job of capturing that in a way I've seen plenty of other big budget films do and fail. So like for that, I give it big props, especially because like I love that era of style, being the 40s, not the turn that century. I mean, I love that era too of like silent films and the rest, but it was really gratifying to see. And I like the sequencing. I did mention too, there is like a very short like horror dream sequence where she does see her mother like in black and white and she's in black and white. It's super short, but like we get that as well. And I liked all of that. I love the portrayal of like the budding, the early dawn, the planting of the seed of like pornographic films and how that's shown. I find that fascinating on its own, the history of it, and the rest and everything to do with the character. It is kind of slow. I think it is exactly what you would want from seeing the trailer, and what I would want coming out of X. So I think for all of that, I'm going to give it a 4.5. It is not a perfect movie. It's not perfect for me, but it's real damn close. Like, and it does some great stuff, and some really impressive stuff. And I think I was really sold by the end, just by that wonderfully long hanging shot on the credits. It's funny, it's terrifying, it's cool, and it's a real feat from Mia Goth. And I think that she just delivers another phenomenal performance after doing like 2 characters in X. So yeah, I have big props to Mia Goth. 4.5.
Word. Well, that'll be an average of 4.2 out of 5 for Pearl. So check it out. Definitely recommended. Do we have predictions for that? Or no, we weren't expecting this to come out. This was a surprise. That's right. So we have nothing for this. Next week is Don't Worry, Darling. Is it time for that? Hoo boy. Yeah, so Don't Worry, Darling is next week. We'll get to talk about all of the surrounding drama that has been the buzz of the internet recently.
Fucking hot mess.
Wait,
Jesus Christ.
Is that the 50s one?
Yes.
Yeah, with Florence Pugh and Olivia Wilde.
we predicted that one.
Yeah.
I really like Olivia Wilde. So.
Well, so that'll be next week. We'll see how the movie turned out. There's certainly been quite a bit of production drama that has been in the news. Yeah. So we'll see what the final product is.
Just quick sponsor. We've been at this for a minute. All right. This episode is brought to you by, let me check my notes, a white girl misusing the term liminal space. I just think that, that this film does an incredible job of displaying liminal space. I think that Pearl just really, brought me to a sense of liminality and liminal
when she's
space.
on the stage dancing and you can see World War I happening behind her.
Liminal.
That was such, just like a liminal space.
It's so liminal. Wow. So deep. So liminal.
Okay, well,
there you go.
That'll do it for us this week. If you like the show, leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/podpeoplepod. Shout out to honorary pod boys Sam Simon, Zach Confer. Y'all are the best. You can follow us on Twitter at podpeoplepod and at letterboxd.com/podpeoplepod, where you'll find a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those reviews. I'm on Twitter at SomeSpookySnake.
I'm on Twitter at Mr. Sheets.
I'm occasionally tweeting for Light X Jews, who put out very slow progress on It Stares Back. You can also find my work primarily on dreadxp.com, working on all the cool games that we're putting out. Go check out DreadXP's games. We've got Mortuary Assistant. We've got a new update for Spookware now. We've got a new updates for Dread Delusion also, and lots of other cool stuff on the way. We recently announced Outsiders. Go check out all the cool stuff that's going on with The Outsiders as well. And that's it from me.
Well, thanks for listening. Until next time, remember to make the best of what you got.
I was meant for the stage. I was meant for the curtain. I was meant to tread these boards of this much I am certain. I was meant for the crowd. I was meant for the shouting. I was meant to raise these hands with quiet all about me. Oh, Mother, please be proud. Father, be forgiving. Even though you told me, son, you'll never make